on Zoom, and I'm going to give a chance for people to be admitted into the Zoom room. So we'll give you a minute or two as we let you in. And again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, I see people coming in. I see people joining. We're glad to have you. Glad to have you here. Come on in. Come on into the Zoom room. All right. Okay, Delaware. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much again for taking the time out of your busy day to join us on Zoom and Facebook Live. I'm Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, and I am excited to be hosting this session today alongside a few very special presenters, including Melanie Overall from the Taxpayer Advocate Service, Kate Hyundai from the IRS, and also we have Stacy Hunter Withers from Nehemiah Gateway and Andrew Grossman from the House Committee on Ways and Means. In case you don't know what the House Committee on Ways and Means is, it's the committee with the money. It's the one that talks about taxes and the things that will help to make sure that we are connected to the work that we're doing in Washington, D.C. So we're proud to have all of these presenters. And I want to thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon as they share their expertise with Delawareans. And to all the guests on today's call, including Delaware's State Auditor, Lydia York, thank you again for taking time out of your day to join. I also want to recognize a couple of members of my team who have been instrumental in pulling this event together. Iris Turner in our office, who helps so many Delawareans find resources through grants, but also helps organizations when they're having difficulties with the federal government and they need that liaison and that contact. So thank you, Iris. And then also Shania Trammell, who is now helping individuals who may have challenges with the IRS and their cases. And I'm just so grateful for them for pulling this event together again, and looking forward to seeing what comes of all of your questions. Now, while 2022 had its challenges, there were also some great achievements that we should be proud of. From upgrading our roads, bridges, and highways through the bipartisan infrastructure law and lowering healthcare costs through the Inflation Reduction Act, to supplying our supply chains, dealing with that through the CHIPS and Science Act, and keeping our sacred obligation to our veterans through the PACT Act. Congress passed some of the most transformative pieces of legislation in decades. The Inflation Reduction Act also increased funding for the IRS to be able to hire more staff to help clear the backlog of unprocessed tax returns and improve customer service. Think about it, our unemployment rate is at its lowest since 1969. Gas prices are down. We made a lot of progress, and I'm proud to have helped secure that progress to improve our state, because assisting Delawareans is at the very core of my job. And that's why it's so important to me to host this event each year to help Delawareans navigate tax filing season. My office is a resource here to help you. Before today's event, I asked Delawareans to submit their questions and concerns about tax filing season to my office. And what we found was a set of common questions. Many of you were concerned about filing taxes while collecting Social Security. What tax credits are available for electric vehicles, and changes in tax laws for 2023. And to answer those questions, we've brought in the experts to share their expertise and hopefully provide clarity and some useful information. Following the presentations by Andrew, Melanie, and Kate, they will have some time to answer your questions that you've submitted, and then we will hear from Stacy. Remember that they are here to help you make filing your 2022 taxes a little less challenging and smoother. And as a reminder, if you have questions about your personal own specific tax case or are having an issue with the IRS, please contact my casework team in the Wilmington office by calling 302 830-2330. I'm going to say that one more time so you can run and get a pen if you didn't, or put it in your phone. It's 302-830-2330. My office will be saving this session on our Facebook page. So feel free to refer back to it later, or if you missed something, you can come back and take a look at it on our Facebook page. We will also be following up with registered participants via email to hear your thoughts on today's event and to provide resources that were shown to you throughout. So if there's a PowerPoint that you see that you wanted to kind of go back to, we're going to be able to provide that to you if you registered. And to all the Delawareans on the line, thank you so much for tuning in. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to our first presenter, Andrew Grossman from the House Committee on Ways and Means, to provide a congressional update. Andrew, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Blunt Rochester. I'm happy to be here. I'm actually coming to you all from Oklahoma City, where the Ways and Means Committee has a field hearing set for tomorrow morning, and I am part of the advance team here in a hotel, and I apologize in advance because I actually have to check out of the hotel pretty much right after I do my presentation. So I'm going to be logging off. But thank you for having me. What I asked Ms. Blunt Rochester's team to do was to give me a sense of the types of questions that you all generally have for her office in terms of legislative activity on the tax front. What you have concerns about, questions about going forward or for this year. And I thought I would take my time to address some of those questions that they provided with me in advance. The first one that they mentioned is that they get a lot of questions about the changes to the form 1099-K. Now that's the form that a lot of folks think about when they think about money earned from jobs and the like in the gig economy. So the first thing I will say is that those changes have not gone into effect yet. The IRS delayed those changes for a year, and they did that in part to make sure that the rollout of those changes would be smooth. Now, what do I mean by being smooth? I mean that they want to make sure that when a taxpayer receives that form, they understand exactly what it is saying and what it isn't saying. And importantly, it's important for you to understand that what it isn't saying is that the money that is on a form that you get, the amount that it shows, for instance, that you received from Uber or from eBay or from Venmo, and I'll talk to you a little bit about Venmo in a second, is not necessarily money that you owe taxes on. It's just the amount that the company gave to you. And for instance, if you sold something on eBay, and if you sold, let's say you had an old chair that you were trying to get rid of, and you bought that chair for $250, and then you were trying to sell it for $100, well, that's not taxable income to you. That's something that you took a loss on. Now, eBay doesn't know that you bought that chair for $250 and sold it for $100. But what's important for you to understand is that the IRS also understands this. The IRS understands that these are just gross payments that you receive and don't necessarily reflect your tax liability. And so my first advice to you is A, none of these changes are going into effect now. But B, when they do go into effect, don't necessarily panic and think that just because you got a form, that's something that you have to put on your taxes. And one of the things that we are working on as the committee with the IRS is trying to help advise the IRS in making those forms more clear onto that very point. What is on the number on that form is not necessarily the number that will have to go on your tax form. The last thing I want to touch on this point is I think there's a lot of misconception about, especially on the Venmo aspect of this form. The law only applies to Venmo if you use Venmo in your trade or business. So in other words, if you use Venmo in the same way a business uses Square or a business uses a credit card processor, well, then Venmo will be providing you with that form. But if you go out to dinner with a friend and then you pay and your friend reimburses you for half the dinner using Venmo, Venmo shouldn't be, Venmo not only should not, will not send you a tax form for that amount. Venmo understands when taxpayers, when their clients are using their product in their business or just using their product as a way of reimbursing money between each other. And so I just wanted to clarify that point, because I think a lot of people are very concerned that they're going to be getting forms from the IRS forms on things like paying people back for dinners, and that's just not the case. Okay, that was topic number one. Topic number two I wanted to go to is Ms. Blunt Rochester's office tells me that they get a lot of questions about the Fair Tax Act. The Fair Tax Act is a proposal that is sponsored by, I think, 20 or so members of the Republican Party, which would repeal the repeal the federal income tax. It would it would abolish the IRS, and it would replace the whole thing with a 30% national sales tax. I think it's pretty safe to say that there is no Democrat in Congress who supports the Fair Tax Act. It would, massively increase the cost of not only everyday consumer goods that you generally think of when you think of as having a sales tax applied to it, but things like, but it applies to literally everything you buy. So if you go to the doctor, for instance, and you have a copay, a 30% tax would be attached to that. If you bought prescription medication, a 30% tax would be attached to that. If you paid college tuition, a 30% tax would be attached to that. It is a massively large tax proposal in that sense, and it would replace, the IRS, which we support as an agency designed to help us properly function and collect revenue, with 51 state level IRSs essentially. We think that's generally inefficient, and wouldn't really solve the problems that to the extent you have a problem with the IRS, it wouldn't necessarily solve that problem. So I guess I'll just close my remarks on that by saying it is very, very, very unlikely that the Fair Tax Act will move forward at all this Congress. I think that once it got a lot of attention, even the Republicans who supported it have started to peel off their support, because they've realized just sort of how incredibly harmful raising prices on consumer goods and services that would be. So I would say, although it is certainly something to monitor, I think because of Democratic opposition, there's really very little chance of it passing. The third thing I wanted to mention is there are just questions about overall changes in the tax code this year, and I would say primarily for individuals, the changes in the tax code this year when you're filing are going to relate to provisions that you got in when you filed your 2021 tax return in 2022 that have now expired due to Republicans blocking them when we tried to enact them in the Build Back Better Inflation Reduction Act. Those are things like expansions of the child tax credit, changes to the earned income tax credit, and changes to the child independent care tax credit. Your taxes were probably reduced and reduced fairly significantly by those changes. The Democrats are we continue to try to push them into law and to make them permanent features of the tax code, and we're going to continue to try to do so. Unfortunately, we weren't able to extend them beyond the 2021 tax year last year. So we're not going to be able to. So you may see a change in your tax liability when you file your 2022 taxes as a result of those. And the other fairly significant changes are on the consumer side will come in the area of green energy. There are a host of tax credits that you might qualify for in terms of retrofitting your home with windows and other heat pumps and other potential items that lower your household carbon emissions. And I'm sure Ms. Blunt Rochester's office has more details on that, and you'll probably be hearing more about that throughout this presentation as well. The last point folks asked me to talk about is you've probably heard along with discussion of the significant infusion of funding that we gave to the IRS in terms of a long-term investment in making sure they're able to properly respond to the needs of everyday Americans, is Republicans talking about IRS, so-called enforcement agents and armed IRS agents, and storming the land. Just to say it, very few IRS agents are armed. Why would we ever arm an IRS agent? Occasionally, the IRS needs to do serious criminal investigations. We got Al Capone due to tax evasion, for instance. So for really serious criminal investigation, there are a small handful of armed IRS agents. But IRS agents, as a general matter, are not armed. They are people like you and me who come to work every day. In the federal workforce, trying to do the job as best as they can. While there's talk of adding 87,000 IRS agents to the workforce, it's important to remember that the federal government workforce is aging quite rapidly, and in fact, most of those additional agents are actually simply replacing agents that are expected to retire over the course of the next decade, which will be a very serious problem if the IRS didn't actually have the funding to be able to replace those agents. So I just wanted to make sure I dispelled a couple of those myths as to what the IRS is going to be doing with that additional funding. This is really about taxpayer service. It's really about taxpayer fairness, and we are very proud to be able to make sure that we're supporting the IRS.
Andrew, thank you so much for that update from the federal perspective. I really want to hit on a couple of things, and also thank Ranking Member Richie Neal, who has been so supportive of Delaware whenever I have questions. But on that first one, that flat tax at 30%, as the home of tax-free shopping, we don't appreciate that. The second thing I want to say is the child tax credit. It has been said that over 50% of our children were lifted out of poverty. We do and are continuing to work on that, as well as those other tax credits that help support working families. And so we'll continue to fight for that. The energy efficiency part. So our office, I've been named to an implementation council, a leadership council in the House, that will be getting the word out to you about potential opportunities for making your home or your cars or other things energy efficient, and making sure that you get, those real rebates and that real incentive to do that, to make our environment better, as well as create great jobs. And lastly, I don't think we got any Al Capones in Delaware, hope not. And I'm glad you mentioned the workforce piece. Workforce has been a big issue across the board, whether it's nurses or teachers, but the same is true for the IRS. In addition to making sure we have people that can provide customer service, we also know that the more complicated tax problems and the ones that may be the cheats are the ones that can get away because it's harder and it takes more effort. And so we need to make sure, as we're collecting from those millionaires and billionaires, that we've got folks that have the skills and capacity to do it. So thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing with us. And I think we're now moving on. Next coming up is Melanie. Melanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm so excited to be here, and good afternoon to everybody. Let's see if my slide's coming up. Thank you, Iris. Today, I'm going to share some of the most common filing errors and tips on how to avoid them. Next slide. Always use the information reported on your Form W-2 or Form 1099. Your employers and financial institutions have until January 31st to send year-end wage-related statements. Typically, these forms start arriving by mail after, my apologies. Start arriving by mail after the beginning of February. Be aware that your last pay stub may not match your W-2 because of the end of year corrections by the payer. So if you use that pay stub information instead to file early and it doesn't match exactly, it will cause a delay in processing your tax return. And here are some additional tips. You should confirm that each payer has your current address before the end of the calendar year. Review all forms for accuracy, and if you find any discrepancies, contact the payer immediately and request the payer issue corrected and a corrected statement issued as soon as possible. Next slide. The IRS compares income and withholding reported on your tax return to Forms W-2 and other information returns. This is to ensure that accurate returns are processed and to help identify fraudulent refunds before refunds are issued. Next slide. Remember to check name spellings, social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, and even your own bank account information for accuracy. You must have valid social security numbers for all your dependents before filing, or it may not only delay processing of your tax return, but can also disqualify you for some refundable credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit. Next slide. Review the tax form instructions to ensure you claim all the deductible items and credits for which you are eligible. A lot of the eligibility requirements for these items often change yearly, so follow the instructions carefully, double check your entry information, and always recheck your math. Next slide. The Earned Income Tax Credit requirements. Always check the income limits first, or use the EITC Assistant tool on irs.gov. Must have social security numbers valid for employment for yourself and spouse and all qualifying children before due date of the return. You must have the filing status of married filing joint, head of household, qualified widow or widower, or single. You must be a U.S. citizen or resident alien all of the year. You can't file Form 2555 or Form 2555-EZ to report foreign earned and claimed credit. And you must meet rules for those without a qualifying child or have a qualifying child. And please note your earned income must be below the tax year's limit to claim the EITC, and you must also have not had investment income that exceeds $10,000. Earned income limitations change yearly and also vary based on the number of children claimed and your filing status. Next slide. The 2022 EITC info. So show proof of earned income, have investment income 10,000 or less, have a valid for employment social security number, be below the earned income limitation for your filing status and qualifying children, and be a U.S. citizen or resident alien all year. Next slide. Common EITC errors. So claiming a child who does not meet residency or relationship requirements, reporting income or expenses, particularly on Schedule C, incorrectly, filing as a single or head of household when married, and the name and social security numbers not matching. For more information on common errors seen with EITC, visit irs.gov and go to the Earned Income Tax Credit Common Errors section. Next slide. The credit for other dependents is available for taxpayers for each of their qualifying dependents who can't be claimed for the child tax credit. The maximum credit amount is $500 for each dependent who meets certain conditions. And these conditions are the dependents who are age 17 or older, dependents who have individual taxpayer identification numbers, dependent parents or other qualifying relatives supported by the taxpayer, and dependents living with the taxpayer who aren't related to the taxpayer. Next slide. Education expenses. You need a Form 1098-T tuition statement from an eligible educational institution to claim education expenses. Schools have until January 31st to provide this form, and it can be provided by mail or electronically. If not received by early to mid-February, you'll need to contact the institution to get a copy. We've seen several cases in the past where this credit was claimed when a tax return preparer completes a return, but the taxpayer never actually went to school. So double check all credits claimed on the return, especially if someone is preparing it for you before signing it. Please make sure to review the Form 1098-T for accuracy as well, including amounts paid to prevent possible issues when claiming this credit. Next slide. The premium tax credit. Form 8962 premium tax credit must be submitted if the premium tax credit is being claimed. Use Form 1095A Health Insurance Marketplace Statement to complete the Form 8962. Tax returns may be delayed during the processing if the credit is claimed, but no Form 8962 is attached. And also remember, if you receive a corrected or voided Form 1095A after you file your tax return, you may need to amend your return. Next slide. Before filing, gather all your records first and make sure you have documents that support every amount of income, deductions, or credits appearing on your tax return. Remember to attach all forms and schedules before you submit your return. Next slide. Free tax preparation may be available to you by VITA or TCE. The TCE program offers free tax help, particularly for those who are 60 years of age or older and specializing in questions about pensions and retirement-related issues unique to seniors. Before going to the VITA or TCE site, you can see publication 3676B for services provided. You can get that on irs.gov. Tax professional help. The information on our site, as well as irs.gov, explains the various tax return preparer credentials and qualifications, and how to avoid unethical ghost return preparers. There is also information on making a complaint if you have been financially impacted by a tax return preparer's misconduct or improper tax return preparation practices. Next slide. We recommend strongly electronically filing your tax return. It's faster, more accurate, and secure. We also recommend direct deposit to receive your refund faster. Please remember, using a bank account that belongs to someone else may cause delays receiving your refund. Next slide. All right, let's talk about how we can help you help yourself. Our website, TAS, has self-help information on many tax-related topics with step-by-step instructions on how to work the problem through with the IRS. TAS's website is designed to help taxpayers and tax professionals alike, and parts of it are available in Spanish as well as English. Next slide. Always try to resolve your problem with the IRS first, but if you can't, then come to the Taxpayer Advocate Service. We also have a new online tool that can help you determine if it's time to call us for assistance. And you can visit Taxpayer Advocate's site to access the TAS qualifier tool. Next slide. Again, we urge you to check out TAS's website or sign up to follow us on social media for information about tax help and the latest tax-related news. TAS holds problem-solving days locally in each state. And during these types of events, you can bring your tax account related information, notices you receive from the IRS, and any other documentation for TAS employees to review. If we can assist you to resolve it right then and there, we will. And if not, and you qualify for our help, we'll open a case and work with you until the issue is resolved. Next slide. The Taxpayer Advocate Service is hiring. If you're interested in a rewarding position, please visit USA Jobs or www.taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov/careers. And I hope this information shared today is helpful. And thank you. And remember to visit irs.gov for answers to your tax questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you again, Melanie. And for everybody, please share with your friends or family if they are interested in a job. Next up, we have Kate. Kate, you're up next.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone today. I hope that my information is helpful and that I answer some questions in case anyone, any questions that anyone has. I want to make a note about my slides going forward. After this slide, each one will have a link to the topic at hand. So if you want to refer to it afterwards, you can click on the link and it'll take you to the irs.gov page that corresponds to the information. So the first thing I want to talk about is filing season dates. As you may know, our filing season began January 23rd. So we are underway with our tax return processing efforts. And this year, the filing deadline is April 18th. That is a Monday. And actually, it might be a Tuesday. It doesn't matter. It's April 18th. And so we still have about 6 weeks to go. There is an extension available. It's always available. And for taxpayers that are requesting that extension, the tax return due date will be Monday, October 16th. That one is a Monday. I do want to mention this only extends the amount of time to file. It does not extend the amount of time to pay. So if you have a balance due, you will still have to pay that balance by April 18th or enter into a payment arrangement by April 18th. Next slide, please. I wanted to let you know that there are quite a few online tools available to help you with your filing efforts. They are available on irs.gov. And the very first one that you'll see is called the Let Us Help You page. It has links to information and resources on a wide range of topics for both individual taxpayers and businesses. This includes transcript requests, payment options, identity theft information, and lots more. The second online tool I want to mention is called the online account. This is something that you'd have to register for, similar to online banking or lots of other things that have online accounts these days. Medical, healthcare, companies have online accounts as well. So it's similar to that. And the online account is helpful because it lets you access your personal tax information for the current year as well as a few prior years. You can get tax return transcripts. You can request them there. You can also see prior year information. You can take a look at your payment history. There are certain notices available. Sometimes the IRS sends out correspondence, and some of those notices are available in your online account as well. Also, if you have a power of attorney on file, you can get that information there. And also something that's really important, but I don't think people think about, is you can verify to make sure that your name and address are correct. Whatever the IRS has on file for you will appear in your online account, so you can make sure that that's correct as well. Another helpful online tool is the IRS Free File system. This is a partnership between IRS and brand name tax return preparation software providers. It allows people that meet certain criteria to have their returns prepared for free by these other brand name companies. And you can find it at irs.gov/free file. You can also find out the criteria to see if you qualify. The next online tool I want to mention, it's kind of a double. There's information about choosing a tax return professional, and there's also a directory of federal tax return preparers who have certain qualifications that the IRS might require in a situation where your tax return preparer is going to represent you in front of the IRS. Sometimes they need to have certain qualifications. So you can certainly look through there. The IRS doesn't endorse any particular preparer, but it is a way to locate someone that has credentials within a certain geographic area. There's also the Interactive Tax Assistant tool. This answers many tax questions that you might have, especially during filing season. It can tell you things like whether or not a particular type of income is taxable, or if you are eligible to claim a certain credit or a deduction. It can also answer general questions such as determining whether or not you even need to file based on what kind of income you have, maybe what your filing status is, and whether or not you have a dependent who's eligible for various credits. Probably our most famous online tool, and the one that people use the most, is Where's My Refund? Of course, this is aptly named. You can use this tool to determine the status of your tax refund. Current year information is usually available within 24 hours of electronically filing a tax return. For paper returns, it can take a little longer, well, a lot longer. It's usually about 4 weeks. We recommend that you wait before you look up information if you have mailed your return in. I do want to also mention, Where's My Refund is only updated once every 24 hours, and it's usually overnight. So if you check in the morning and you're not seeing an update, then you don't need to check back again until the next day, because the information will not be updated until overnight in most cases. And then the last online tool I want to mention, we just heard from Melanie about this, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program and the Tax Counseling for the Elderly Program. These are also known as VITA and TCE. There is information about both of those programs available at irs.gov, and there is a VITA site locator tool as well, where you can input your zip code, and then you can select the number of miles that you're willing to travel to find a site, and the tool will provide you with a list of the sites, the names of them, and contact information, as well as where they are. Next slide, please. I thought I might share some IRS operation status updates. Again, there is an irs.gov page that has a lot of information about different types of things. You can get information about if you filed an identity theft affidavit, or maybe if you applied for an ITIN. There are updates available about a large number of topics. So I encourage you to check there if you're kind of wondering what the status is of an IRS related item that you have. I do want to just talk briefly about some filing status, filing season operations updates, since that's what this discussion is about. Currently, we have processed all paper and electronic individual returns that we received prior to January 2023. We are opening mail within normal timeframes as well. We are through the backlog of mail, so that's great news. This means essentially that we have processed all tax returns that we've received for tax year 2021 or earlier, if those returns were error-free and they did not require further review. Sometimes there's mistakes, and we need to reach out and get information from the taxpayer to find out what happened with the return, so we can make sure we have the correct information. So if you do get a notice from us, it's in your best interest to send in the information as quickly as possible, so that we can finish processing your return and get you squared away. I also want to just mention the amended tax returns. That's Form 1040X. As of February 18th, we had about 503,000 unprocessed amended tax returns. These are being processed in the order received, but the current time frame can be more than 20 weeks, especially for those that were filed on paper. As always, e-filing is a much faster process. We do ask that if you're waiting on an amended return to be processed, please do not file another one. That actually just causes further delays. And there is an amended return online tool, Where's My Amended Return, similar to Where's My Refund, where you can get up-to-date processing status for an amended return as well. Next slide, please. Next, I wanted to mention briefly, which we have heard already about, the newest tax legislation. That's the Inflation Reduction Act. There are a lot of different credits and deductions available, quite a few, in fact. And Treasury, alongside the IRS, is still working to clarify details about how these will work. So I would encourage you to look at irs.gov under the news and announcements section. There's a whole page dedicated to the Inflation Reduction Act. It does provide the latest guidance. It's continuously being updated as things are clarified and information becomes available. All of the electric vehicle information is there as well. There's FAQs. There's probably more information than you could possibly even imagine. So it is a great resource, and do keep it in mind if you want to check those out. Next slide, please. We recently the IRS recently was able to upgrade our systems to allow for electronic filing of amended tax returns. Those again are the 1040X. We are very excited about that. And this year we've got a new development, even of the new development, and that is that you will be able to select direct deposit as a way to get your tax refund when you file an amended return. Even though we were accepting electronic 1040Xs before, you still were getting a paper check. So this is a great change, a helpful one to help you get your refunds even quicker. Next slide, please. The last topic I want to mention is one that was being discussed quite a bit, and that was whether or not certain state relief payments were going to be considered taxable for federal purposes. The IRS did announce a few weeks ago that if a payment was made for the promotion of the general welfare of the public or as a disaster relief payment, it might be excludable from federal income tax depending on the nature of the payment. So as you might imagine, determining whether or not these payments qualify for the exception it's complex, it's fact intensive, it depends on a number of considerations. And with so many states issuing payments in 2022, it is an arduous task to go through each individual one. Sometimes it even breaks down to the individual circumstances of the particular taxpayer in question. So because of this, the IRS decided that if a taxpayer chooses not to include income from one of these state relief payments in 2022, that they will not challenge that position. This only applies for the 2022 tax year, and it's important to note that the IRS is not stating that these types of payments are not taxable. It's simply confirming that if you choose to treat it that way in 2022, it will not be challenged. So essentially, state relief payments are not taxable for 2022, but they could be going forward. I hope I haven't thoroughly confused you with that. But I did want to mention it because Delaware issued payments that do fall into this category. So you may or may not have gotten one, and I just wanted to let you know that it won't be taxable or considered taxable this year. I think that's it. That's all I wanted to cover for the moment.
Great.
So I'll turn it back over.
Thanks, Kate. And now we're going to just ask a couple of questions that we heard from Delawareans. I'm going to start out with one from Liz from Newcastle County, who asks, if Social Security is my only income, do I need to file a 2023 tax return? Would it be beneficial to file?
So, Congresswoman, I'll take this one. The irs.gov website does have a lot of great tools, and I know she states that Social Security is her only income, and sometimes taxpayers need to consider if they are receiving any retirement funds or any investment income. So I would suggest that she should go to irs.gov and pull Notice 703. It's a worksheet, and it will help her to determine if she does indeed need to file and what refund she could be entitled to. You know, every financial situation is different, and there could be other types of income coming in that, like a part-time job even, that could affect her filing requirements.
Okay. And then we've got a question from Rodney, who asks, how do I find my IP PIN number? Why do I need it for this year? That's Rodney from Newcastle County.
All right, that's a great question, Rodney. So irs.gov has made a lot of improvements, and those tools that Kate was talking about. One of them is an IP PIN tool. Rodney, you can go to irs.gov, type in the search box IP PIN, select Retrieve Your Identity Protection PIN or IP PIN, and it'll give you an option to retrieve online, or it'll give you a phone number to call. And why you need it? So the IRS identifies some accounts that need that extra that extra protection. So an IP PIN helps verify a return filed with your Social Security number was filed by you. And there could be many reasons the IRS assigned your account a number, but it is designed to protect your account information.
Okay, great. So I'm going to kind of combine two questions, and I got one from Newcastle and one from Kent. And Jeff asks, will I receive a credit for my electric vehicle? Which electric vehicles qualify? And that kind of ties into Alex's question from Kent County, which is, have there been any new changes in tax laws for 2023? Those are two pretty big questions. So I'll turn it over to you. Electric vehicles and also changes to the tax code.
So I can take the electric vehicle part.
Okay.
So the IRS.gov does have information on the electric vehicle credits. The new credit will allow for a maximum credit of $7,500 for new electric vehicles and up to $4,000, but it's limited to 30% of the sale price for used. But it's also dependent on the make, model, and year of your electric vehicles. So it is very important to go and do your research and check that irs.gov site. You can just type in electric vehicle in the search engine, and it will give you a whole bunch of information that'll be relative to this.
Great, great. Kate?
And I'll go ahead and talk about the new changes. We did hear from Andrew a little bit about this. Yes, there are some new changes in the tax laws for 2022 and going forward. These include the clean vehicle credits that we heard about. There's also a number of other energy related credits for both businesses and individuals. There's, for example, an energy efficient home improvement credit. There's a residential clean energy credit. Again, lots of information on irs.gov. It's definitely worth taking a look at. And since Andrew mentioned it, I do just want to remind everyone that there were changes to the amounts of the credits for amounts of certain credits, earned income tax credit, child tax credit. They did the amount of possible credit was reduced for the 2022 tax year. So, just be aware of that when filing. And one other, during the COVID years, there was an option to claim charitable contribution deductions, even if you weren't itemizing. Typically, you can only claim those if you take itemized deductions rather than standard deductions. But last year, people were able to take up to $300, I believe, in charitable contributions without itemizing. That is no longer the case either. So again, now you can only claim a charitable contribution deduction if you itemize.
Great. I know we in the interest of time, because I want to make sure we respect everybody's time, we're going to follow up, as we said, with those of you who have tuned in and who have registered. We'll be providing you with the slides and things, but also had a question from Herbie from Sussex County that we're not going to be able to answer it live, but we want to answer it. And that is, how does the IRS decide which taxpayers are audited? Because I think that's a great question. So we'll follow up with those of you who have registered, because we want to get to Stacy from Nehemiah Gateway to have her presentation, and then we'll start the wrap up. Stacy, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to take a minute to thank Andrew, Melanie, and Kate for setting the framework for me, because you guys did an excellent job of sharing valuable information that leads right into the services Nehemiah Gateway provides for Delawareans. So if my presentation can hit the screen, thank you. So Nehemiah Gateway was founded by the Reverend Dr. Clifford I. Johnson, and we've been around for about 22 years. Next slide. We have a partnership. Our primary partner is with First State Community Action Agency, and they run our downstate services in Georgetown. So we partner and work very closely with First State Community Action Agency to deliver free tax preparation services throughout the entire state. Next slide. a quick synopsis, very similar to what Kate said earlier. When you get my PowerPoint presentation, you can click on the links to go to the website to learn more information that we're going to talk to today, because I'm going to kind of talk to the little net and summarize. So at the top where it says about Nehemiah Gateway, you can click on that when you get the PowerPoint, and it'll take you directly to all the information. So a quick net. Nehemiah Gateway was founded over 20 years ago. It is the only 501c3 IRS grant recipient for the VITA tax program. And that simply means we are sponsored and we are sanctioned by the IRS. So all the work that we do, we follow all IRS guidelines and codes of conduct and everything that comes with that. Next slide. And when we talk briefly about what is free tax preparation, the main thing that our program is based on is volunteers. In past years, we've had up to 400 volunteers. After the pandemic, that number is quickly shrunk. And so we're running on limited volunteers. But it's important for me to note to everybody, we cannot do what we do without volunteers. The VITA program is made possible through the generosity of our volunteers who take time to train on weekends and after work to become IRS certified volunteer tax preparers. So we're thankful for the work that they do to help us run this program, and we can't do it without them. Next slide. Nehemiah's impact in partnership with First State over the past 20 years since 2000, we have issued more than $371 million in refunds. That's done by 5,900 volunteers. And we've saved taxpayers over $41 million in fees that they pay to private companies to do their taxes because we do it for free. In keeping with that, we've issued more than $25.9 million in earned income tax credits just since 2016. And that means we filed nearly 200,000 returns. That's why what we do is important, and we value our volunteers so much. Next slide. This slide right here gives you a link directly to Nehemiah's website. And we want you to be able to go to our website to get all the valuable information you need about making appointments and the options for following your free tax returns. Next slide. Here's our flyer. This shows all of our tax locations. When you go to our website, you'll get all the locations and all the hours on what days and what times and what areas where we provide services. And this is also clickable. When you get the presentation, you'll be able to click on the flyer to get a bigger view of what the flyer looks like. Next slide. So here's the free tax options. The primary options, which most of our clients use, are the drop-off services. And we have drop-off sites across the entire state. We have about 11 of them this season, including a virtual option. So you either drop off in person, meaning you bring your tax return information to a drop-off site and you make a return appointment to come back, or you drop off and you stay and we complete your return live that day and we get it all done and transmit it all in one day. Sometimes clients can stay and wait for us to complete the return that day. And sometimes they need to drop them off and leave and come back another day. That's all dependent on the number of volunteers that we have at a site per day. That's why the volunteers are so important. We also have what we call a 100% virtual option, where you upload all of your tax documents. And we actually run this program in conjunction with Get Your Refund for Code for America, which is another partnership through the IRS. Where clients don't have to come into a tax site, and it's done 100% virtually, meaning uploading your documents, we review them virtually, we contact you if you have questions, and we transmit them virtually. So a lot of clients had started using this option during the pandemic. So even though the world is starting to open up, we do recognize that the pandemic is still upon us. So we still have this option available to our clients. And then last but not least, we have DIY, what we call do it yourself. Those are those free file links that Kate talked about, where you could go to the IRS website and find a locator. We also have those links on our page as well. We have the one specific to Delaware because we want you to use the links that you can also file your state return using the links that we provide, because not all the free file services also provide state tax return preparation as well. Next slide. This next slide is just more information once you actually get the PowerPoint presentation, where you can click on links. You can select the option, you can select a drop-off site, you can look at the flyer, you can click on what you need to bring to your appointment, you can click on how do I file virtually, what's needed, and then you can learn more about the do-it-yourself tax preparation links. Next slide. We get feedback from clients all the time. I will tell you that we can't please every client because not everybody qualifies for our low to moderate income program, but we work with clients so often to help them get the services they need, even if they don't qualify for our program. And some of the things that our clients have told us, this is just in the last tax season, that the program is good for the community. It's helping us with valuable resources for topics on financing and that many people haven't been introduced to. Another client says, I was a client years ago, and it really helped my family with getting our taxes done for free. And I was able to help with our kids' education after high school for college. Next slide. One of the most profound testimonies we've gotten from a client over the years has been the one where they tell us things like, I'm a returning client, because it says they come back to our services year after year. And it's been a blessing to be able to drop them off and feel at ease that they are being done correct and not have to give most of my money away to have them done. Because of some of these agencies, they overcharge for their taxes. That's the $41 million that we talked about got saved because clients used our free tax services. And the program has helped some save money from paying H&R Block big fees, companies that charge you to have taxes done, was able to use more money to help pay off bills or get something fixed in my home. And that's important because you're keeping more money in the household to use that people need to pay attention to. Next slide. And I think Melanie mentioned that Taxpayer Advocacy Service is always hiring. Well, Nehemiah Gateway is always looking for volunteers. So here's our volunteer advertisement for you. We'd love to have you. No experience needed. We train, we provide tools, we provide resources, and we look forward to having people come back to volunteer with us year after year. Next slide. And this is just a quick snapshot where you can click on all the links on how you volunteer and how we can assist you with training. Next slide. And this is an image on our website. When you go and select free tax prep, you'll get to choose one of these options that I talked about. Drop off at a tax site location, complete your return 100% virtually, or do it yourself. Next slide. Again, we thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you and to share our free tax services. And we look forward to servicing and volunteering with you in the future. Congresswoman Rochester, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you so much. I want to wrap up because in the interest of time, I want to again thank our presenters, Melanie, Kate, Stacy, and Andrew, for providing that insight, guidance, and advice. I hope you all received some information, but if you have more questions, don't forget, our team is always available at 302-830-2330. Our caseworkers are ready to assist if it's an individual problem. This session is going to be from that we did on Facebook. We'll be able to refer to it later if you want to do that. And also we're going to be reaching out to all of you who registered for this session so that we can provide the resources to you. Again, we are so grateful that you joined us. Hope you learned some things for your own tax purposes, but also maybe for a volunteer opportunity or for a job. Please spread the word because we want to make sure that people have these resources. Thank you especially to Iris and Shania on our team for making this possible again this year. And I shared with them, I'd love it if we could maybe do something as a follow-up particularly on all of the new energy tax credits, all of the rebates, the things that we can be able to provide to you with this new legislation that will help us keep the planet clean and safe. It will help us create more jobs. It'll help bring money back into your pockets, and it'll help just and for all of our quality of life. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to file your taxes. Don't forget to file your taxes. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.